Good morning. Welcome to CBIA's webinar on essential skills for supervisors and managers. I'm Diane Mokrisky, HR counsel here at CBIA. So today we're going to focus on what are known as soft skills for managers, which are no less important than the other skills you may already have regarding your specific expertise and the products and services that your company offers. But it's one thing to manage a company, right? And it's quite another to manage the people that make up that company. And that involves a specific set of skills that can be learned and practiced and perfected. In my role here at CBIA, I often help members who call with problems that maybe could have been avoided with a little managerial finesse. And so we'll see if we can help you hone those skills today. This morning, I'm joined by three experts in this area, Bob Dickson, Stephanie Sweeney, and Lisa Pollock, each of whom will give you their expertise and their perspective on these issues. We'll be addressing things like the difference between a leader and a boss, and how to manage conflict, and how to communicate with a workforce that's really diverse, right? Because you've got people who are Gen Z, you've got people who are boomers, they all listen differently, they all work differently. And so those are things that we'll be addressing today, and that'll be important for you as managers. We're going to go until about 12:15. We'll have 3 one-hour segments with a break. And sometime early next week, we will also email out a recording of the webinar and a copy of all the slides. So we'll start with Bob Dickson. Good morning, Bob. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Bob is president of Dale Carnegie Training, Connecticut. And so Dale Carnegie has about 200 offices throughout the world, but he's in charge of Connecticut. And I understand about 90% of his clients come from our state. And so he's got particular expertise regarding Connecticut employers. He's got over 30 years of business experience and a passion for helping companies get the best from their people. He assists with authentic selling, leadership, engagement, communication skills. And I think today he's also going to focus at least somewhat on things that new managers need to focus on. Maybe some of you out there are new to management, that you got a promotion or you have a new type of role, and he's going to address that. So he's going to be doing our first segment, how to be a leader as opposed to just being a boss. So thanks very much, Bob, for joining us. Why don't you get started and let's see your slides.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. Good morning. Hope everyone's doing well today. And once again, my name is Bob Dickson. I am from Dale Carnegie Training, and I'm a lifelong resident of Connecticut, and really appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to the group from CBIA. So yeah, we're going to talk about how to be a better leader, whether you're new to the position or you've been there before. Some ideas on what to think, how to act, and some leadership decisions that we can make to streamline and make our jobs easier. I know that's one of the things that we talk about in our leadership programs. I always ask that of new leaders. I say, do you want to make your job easier? Isn't that what we're all trying to do? And, in a lot of cases, we have this syndrome called buddy to boss, right? Where one day you're the buddy, and then maybe you get promoted on Friday, and then on Monday you start off and you're the boss. And it's a whole new muscle group, right? It's a whole new mindset. And you have to think about things in a different way to hold people accountable, to be responsible to achieving the goals and the outcomes of the organization. And all of a sudden, you're the one in charge. And there was a study done by DDI in 2023, and they wanted to determine what were the top CEO concerns. And the top 3 responses were on the screen here, that attracting and retaining new top talent. I mean, that's amazing, right? I mean, we all know that over the last few years, just finding the right people, particularly in a state that's, is a little bit hard to find people, is a little bit more expensive. is to get people into the state of Connecticut, but attracting and retaining top talent. The second one was developing the next generation of leaders. What's amazing is I just heard a report is that by the end of this year, Gen Z, which is the newest generation coming into the marketplace, is going to have more people in the workforce than the baby boomers, right? So the baby boomers are exiting out, and I'm always really understandable, really thrilled to learn more about our generations. And the reason being is because it impacts so much how we get our jobs done. And at this time, there is the only time in history that there's 5 generations in the workforce. Isn't that amazing? And so with this, they did this study. The last one was maintaining an engaged workforce. And when we start thinking about this is what the CEOs are concerned about, is finding people, keeping people, developing people, and engaging people. That's what we need to focus on as leaders in our businesses, right? How do we keep and maintain these people? And a lot of the clients that we're working with, they're finding it really difficult to keep people on board because a lot of the newer generations aren't as loyal as the previous generations to their employers, and they're jumping jobs. And which, is perfectly their right. We're an at-will state here in Connecticut. We can move around, but how do we retain those employees? And that's on the leaders. In fact, the great management consultant, Peter Drucker, he said, the best way to predict the future is to create it. And as leaders, that's something that we want to focus on as well, is how do we predict that future? And how do we maintain a workforce that is collaborative? They're good teammates. They get their job done, and they are particularly focused on really maintaining and being held accountable to the results that they're getting. So as Peter Drucker said, we have to create our own future. And as leaders, it's about building our own skill sets to make that happen. So let's focus on a little bit on some things. We call these the 4 important perspectives that a leader must maintain, right? So we look at these 4 things: people and process. We look at leading and doing. And these are things that are a dilemma for new leaders, right? Do I separate these 2 things, people and process? Do I end up doing a lot more instead of leading? And a conversation that we always engage in at Dale Carnegie is, what is the difference between leading and doing? And, there's only so much a leader can do. And a lot of times they carry that over from their previous job. And there's a reason for that, right? There's a reason that they're carrying it over and they keep doing things that they're probably not responsible for, but their team is going to be held accountable to doing. And it's because they're comfortable doing that work, right? And that's one of the key things is we have to learn how to stretch ourselves and build our leadership acumen to make it happen. And then also we have to be able to separate people from process. I can't tell you how many times as an executive coach, I'm going in and we're having these conversations and, the leader will sit down and be like, well, this person isn't doing their job. And so we sit down, we explore that a little bit more and we're like, is it the person or is it the process, right? Is the person not performing because the process is broken? And that's one of those things that we have to be able to separate and figure out what needs to be done. And there are times that it's not the right fit for the person. And then we have to have that hard conversation. We're going to talk about that a little bit later in our hour together, is how to have a difficult conversation, because it's never easy, but it's something that HR leaders are looking at right now and saying, this needs to be fixed, because they can't keep dropping those into the HR department to have those conversations. Leaders need to know how to do that. So when we start thinking about this, there's some decisions that need to be made, right? And these are leadership decisions. Which way do we need to go? And how do we fix those types of problems? Do we need to focus on the people aspect of the leadership role? Do we need to focus on evaluating the process of the leadership role? Do we need to focus on doing more leading versus doing more doing? Sometimes we have to do Many of you, I'm sure, run a very lean department. You have a very lean organizations, and we might not have the help to do it. So you have to backfill that with some of your own skills. I know a number of the clients that we work with have working managers, right? They have production that they have to produce. And it's the way of the world. And we have to figure out a way to balance that a little bit more. So let's talk about some of the first leadership decisions that we need to focus on. So that is the decision between leading and managing. So during introductions during our programs, a lot of times I'll ask people to describe what they do, right? So we'll come in, just you've probably been through a professional training in the past. And so there's always some type of introductions. So in a leadership training program in our organization, we always like to do the introductions and say, okay, tell us what you do. And about half the group, this happened just recently, we were starting one about 2 weeks ago, and about half the group called themselves leaders. And the other half of the group called themselves managers. And I stopped. I got this quizzical look, kind of like I have right now. I stopped the class and I said, let's have a conversation about that. I said, which one are you? Are you a leader or are you a manager? Because it sounds like we're doing a lot of this interchangeable, right? You might have described your position interchangeably with those two words, right? I'm a leader, I'm a manager. But we always say they have two different definitions. They have two different responsibilities. And so let's take a look at what that is. So we're going to do this. We're going to make it a little interactive today. And to make it interactive, in your chat, we're going to ask you to please put down what you would characterize as the attributes or traits of a leader. All right. So please go ahead. What do leaders do? In chat, go ahead and just type that in. Attributes, traits, characteristics. What does a leader do? Give you a moment to catch up and get into chat. There we go. Thank you, Brittany, kicking us off. Influence, cast vision. Thank you, Todd. Teach, inspire. All right, we're getting some. Yeah, there we go. Fantastic. Going fast. We have Donna said lead by example. There we go. Michelle guides people. Let's see. Megan, problem solvers. There we go. Joe creates a vision. Fantastic. We have team building. All right, good. We get a lot of good responses, a lot of engagement here in the program itself. So we're starting to get a feeling for this, that the leaders are kind of focused on this big picture, right? They're trying to influence and persuade people to get things done. They're following along and they're setting the goals and they're trying to let's see, John says lead by example and directs the group. Nancy says encourage. R. Mahood says motivates others to work towards shared goals. Yeah, those are all things that leaders are trying to accomplish. When we think about it, let's go ahead now and let's think about what do managers do? All right, same type of thing. We're going to ask, what do managers do? Are they characteristics, traits of managers? All right, there we go. Danielle, first off, oversight. Michelle, delegates work. John, problem solve. We got a bunch of overseas. Bruce, schedules tasks. All right, Brittany, coordinates. Christina, directs. All right, Nancy, gives directions. Let's see, we got a lot more managing, manages processes, Michael said. Very good. Gil, train, hold accountable. Karen, set goals. All right. So we're starting to see a little bit of a difference between what leaders do and what managers do. Yet, in a lot of cases, once again, we use those two terms interchangeably. So we always say this is the first decision that somebody in a leadership position, whether it's a supervisor, a manager, a leader, whatever it is, this is a first decision that they have to make. And this can set you on the path to prioritizing what needs to be done and being more efficient. Instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, one of the things we're saying is make this decision and move. So we have a couple of rules here. Definitions of what leaders are versus what managers are. And it can really help you determine what you need to do when you're in that situation. All right. So we say our definition of leadership is leaders create environments that influence others to achieve group goals, right? So what are we doing? We're influencing people to take action. I think that's one of the hardest things that we have to do. And Diane said it in the introduction, is that if we're going from that person that does the work to the person that's leading it, one of the things that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to influence people to take that action, to do the things that we have to do. And because these are more soft skills, or we call them professional skills where we come from, one of the things that we need to do is we need to elevate our ability to communicate and articulate what it is that needs to be done, thinking about it from the other person's perspective. So one of the first things to think about is, are we needing to create an environment that influences people to achieve group goals? Or let's take a look at the definition for managers. Managers create, implement, and monitor process, right? So there's a big separation between our definitions here, right? So we're influencing others to achieve group goals, or we're creating, implementing, and monitoring process, right? Because people are only going to be as successful as the processes that they employ. And so when we want to make sure that we're having that good separation, but we're getting the work done, is that we can make the distinction through these two definitions. If we want to narrow it down a little bit into something that is really memorable, think about this. We lead people, we manage process, right? So if we can separate those two ideas, then we can have different distinct ways of dealing with each one of those, right? If we need to get people together and collaborate and working together, then we're probably going to be that leadership area. If we need to really focus and delegate and set really clear goals and expectations, then we're going to be managing it, and we should be focusing on what the process is. Is the process going to help somebody succeed? All right. So thinking about those things, how do we make that happen? One of the areas that we can do, we can say, well, if we have really good employees, of course, we need really good employees to do that. If we don't have really good employees, how do we develop really good employees? And a lot of that comes from the relationship, right? There's always this thing. I know in our class, the leadership training for managers program, we always ask them, what are your expectations in the program? What do you want to get out of it? And usually there's a top three answers. And one of those is, I need to motivate my employees, along with being able to delegate, and we need to coach, right? So we're going to bring up those terms coming up in a little bit. But I need to motivate my employees. And we always say motivation is good. What we really are looking for is engagement, right? So it's been a buzzword for the last 10, 12 years. They've done a number of studies on engagement and how do we engage employees? And then why do we want engaged employees? Well, there was a case study done, and it was on the Kodak organization. You probably remember Kodak films and Kodak cameras and everything else like that. You probably haven't seen them in a long time. And there's a reason for that, right? Because, one of the things that Kodak did was they invented the digital camera, right? They had the patent on it. So back in 1978, they invented the digital camera. So, we all have digital cameras today, and that's not showing up on my background, but we all have digital cameras today. Kodak invented it, right? But they, at the time, were 30, 40,000 employees up in Rochester, New York. But that kind of tailed off. But one of the things that they had was they had very satisfied employees. And that was great. They were in the top 3% of organizations with satisfied employees. They had a really high rating. What they found was satisfied employees don't build business, right? They're not ones that are going to go above and beyond. Engaged employees do, right? So we could have really motivated employees, but what we really are looking for is engaged employees. And you as the leader have a really great input into making that happen. So let's take a look here. So we have employee engagement, and we're looking at what is the percentage of the employee engagement that we have. All right. So in chat, please go ahead and fill out with a slash between each one, and I'll give you an understanding of that. Is just looking like that is, what percentage do you think is each one of these? Disengaged employees, indifferent/compliant employees, and engaged employees. So go ahead and put your percentages out of 100%. We'll see what you think, and we'll measure that against what we actually have. All right, so what percentage? All right, Lauren's first, 25, 50, 25. Kyle's 10, 80, 10. Wow, that's a big. We got some 20, 60, 20, 20, 70, 20. All right, Ryan's a 20, 60, 20. All right, very good. Mary, 10, 60, 30. All right, very good. All right, let's take a look at what the answers are. There we go. And first one, disengaged, 17%. A number of you are really close with your 20s. Andrew has a 1, 5, 50, and 44. All right. So very close on some of these, right? So disengaged employees. These are actively and disengaged. These are the ones that don't want to be there, right? Then we have indifferent compliant, 51%. And then engaged employees, 32%, right? So we're talking about these percentages. Why? What does it mean for engaged employees? Well, we all want to have more of the engaged employees. We want that 32%. We want to try and get that as much as possible. And then we have this disengaged employees over here. As leaders, what we're usually familiar with is trying to fix the weaknesses, trying to repair the challenges that people have. And we usually focus on that end, the disengaged or actively disengaged employees. But we have to think about the amount of effort that goes into fixing an employee. And in a book that I read, What the Greatest Leaders Do Differently by the Gallup organization, they said, if it's not in them in the first place, it's going to be really hard for you to put it in them, right? So if we're trying to fix somebody that doesn't want to be there, doesn't want to work that hard, that's going to be a really head against the wall type of challenge for you. So what we say is, if you're going to work on something and you have to supply the same amount of effort, is work in the middle there, right? The indifferent, compliant employees, work on trying to get them over to the engaged employees. That will make your job a little bit easier. And then the other part is going against conventional wisdom, is how much more can you get out of your engaged employees? So put your focus on, don't lose them, because if they're not going to be supported, if they're not going to be recognized, then your engaged employees, which is your A-type employees, are probably going to go away, right? So they're going to find a new space where they're going to be challenged and they're going to be appreciated. And so with that, we have to spend the amount of time on our engaged employees, because they're going to produce the greatest effort and give us, what they call is discretionary effort, their willingness to go above and beyond. So it's amazing, but a staggering 68% of American workers surveyed are not engaged or committed to their work, right? As a leader, that's part of your job, is to help get them engaged. And that's the focus of, it's another decision that you make. Who am I working with? What are we spending our time on as leaders? Because you don't have a lot of time, and that burden can get very heavy with the responsibility. So what's employee engagement? It's characterized as feelings of commitment, passion, and energy, which translates into these benefits, right? So high levels of effort, we just talked about that, right? The more engaged they are, the more willing they're going to give to effort. Let's think about the next one. Persistence with even the most difficult tasks. Too many times we have leaders that come to us and say, my people are not taking responsibility for their own work, right? They'll come to the office, they'll knock on my cubicle, they'll knock on my door, and it's like, hey, boss, we've got a problem, and they'll drop it on me, right? So when we have engaged employees, they'll work to figure out a solution to the problem, even the most difficult things. And then if they get to that point where they can't figure it out, then they'll come to you, right? Next one, they take initiative and act with accountability. They feel they're responsible, they're accountable for their results. And that's one of the things that we want with that engaged employee. And the last part is a collaborative work environment. We want to make sure that we have that collaboration, not just them working with you as the leader, but working with the whole team, right? Internally and externally. Whether it's in your department, whether they're in a group work, right? Where they're a project group or the project team. Maybe they don't have the authority, but they know how to persuade and influence to get things done, but they're collaborative and working together, right? And they're not siloed. That's what the benefits are, the value of creating engaged employees. So let's figure out how to do that. What are some of the engagement factors? Please read through this list of 5 engagement factors, and let's determine which one do you think is the one that you would rank the highest. All right, from your perspective, which one would you rank the highest? And then we'll see which ones a national survey was that a group of leaders ranked. So go ahead and put down the letter of the one that you think is ranked the highest. There we go. Got some E's, A's, B's. All right. So we have some A's, employees are involved in decision to affect them. E's, adequate resources to get the job done. We have some B's, leaders have a sincere interest in employee well-being. Got a C, the organization operates with honesty and integrity. Got a D, clarity on how the leader's role supports the organization's success. Isn't that amazing? We're all over the board. I mean, there's hundreds of people here, but we're all over the board. We have so many different opinions on this. And here's what the survey said. I feel like we're in Family Feud. Survey says, right? That's going old school. B, leaders have a sincere interest in employee well-being. That was above and beyond the #1 factor of engagement that we found in the surveys and the data that we had. Thank you, Patty, for putting them all down. All right. So #1, leaders have a sincere interest in employee well-being. Here's the deal. When a leader has a good relationship with their employees, the trust gets built. And we can't understate how important trust is to getting things done. Engaged employees will do more, they'll be more committed, and they'll give more effort if they feel they have a strong relationship with their boss. Now, is it like a best friend, like, oh, you're my best friend? No, it's just a strong relationship. It has good rapport, and that trust really builds on it. That's why if the employee feels that they have the sincere interest, the best interest at heart for their employees, they will do more for it. And trust is a huge part of that. And so what does it take? It takes an investment of time as the leader in getting to know your people. We spend a lot of time in our programs getting people to understand that your interpersonal skills, your building of a rapport, your focus on the well-being, your empathy is going to have a great impact on your ability to get your job done as the leader, right? So that's one of the things that we want to focus on. And let's determine what are some of those things. Richard Branson said, from CEO Virgin Atlantic, he said, clients do not come first, employees come first. If you take care of your employees, they will take care of your clients, right? I say this all the time to all the customers or all of our clients is that when you want good leaders, have them invest time. Thank you, Janice. Yeah, they are. Richard was correct, right? And he's built an unbelievable organization. But if we do this was never more clear to me. I just had some work done on our garage door at my house. And we were looking around for companies, and I called a few companies, but the one I went with was one where the person on the opposite end of the phone was just so helpful. She was polite, she was caring, and you can hear it all the way through her, just in the intonation in her voice. She really wanted to help. And I thought to myself, because I do this, I'm a professional with this, I do this on a regular basis. I thought to myself, there's a leader there encouraging her and building her and giving her that recognition and appreciation that she's carrying that over. And we see that constantly with companies. Think about the businesses that you do business with, right? And just in your personal life, you can tell when there is a good, stable relationship between the leadership, the ownership, and their employees, because that carries all the way over into the relationship with the customer, right? And that's what we want to do. And so what we found as we did a research study back in 2012, we redid it in 2018, and we redid it in 2022, And we found that there's the top 3 things that people are looking for employee engagement. When we have high levels of employee engagement, this is what they say. They say pride in the organization. They are happy to be there. They like their organization. They have a belief in senior leadership. They believe in the people that are leading them, right? They care about them. And then the last one is they're satisfied with their immediate manager, right? So here's a question for you. Which one do you feel is the one that you have the most control over? So maybe you're a new leader. Maybe you've been in a leadership position for a little bit, right? It's typically the satisfaction with the immediate manager, right? That's the one that you have the most control over. If you spend some time working on that, it will make it happen. So what do we have to do? Goals and objectives are clear. Leaders care about how employees feel. Employees are empowered, right? That's the things that we need to strive to make sure are happening. Confidence in leadership. Employees are a priority. Leaders model core values, and leaders are competent, right? You can do that, but your relationship with the supervisor is the biggest thing. And we always say this, and you've probably heard it before too. People don't leave companies, they leave managers. And I can probably, if we had an opportunity to visually see this and ask people to raise their hands, have you ever left a company because you just don't see a way around the manager, or you just didn't like the way the supervisor treated you, right? Usually I get about 50, 60% of people that have left a company because of something along those lines, right? Gil said very close. Ashley said yes. Nancy said yes. Absolutely. Yeah. People leave companies because of that relationship with the manager. So we have to take that a step further. It's your responsibility as a supervisor, the manager, the leader, is to create that rapport and strengthen that relationship with your employees. And you have to pay attention to them. So let's talk about how we can communicate that. One of the things that a quote here by George Bernard Shaw, the Irish philosopher, he said, the biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it's taken place, right? Isn't that profound? The biggest problem in communication is the illusion it's taken place. That's pretty amazing. That's one of the responsibilities as that leader, is that we need to ensure we're communicating well. We have a time management program, and, in the time management program, one of the quotes that we bring up is from John Wooden, the great UCLA basketball coach. And he always says, why do we have time to do something over, but never enough time to do it right the first time, right? Now that's profound too, right? Why do we have time to do something over, but never enough time to do it right the first time? And what we're really talking about is, if we're communicating and we don't do it well the first time, we're going to have to spend time doing it again. Has anybody ever done that, where you've had to repeat yourself, or you've had to answer questions because the person was unsure of what was said and they didn't quite get it, right? So spending time as a leader in focusing on being clear in your communication and passing the information on is going to help you get your job done and make it easier, right? So transactional to personal, purposeful, right? So one of the things that we want to do is we want to set the expectation that every employee, regardless of role, is personally responsible for the customer experience. But we want to communicate that. We want to establish an environment where people feel their work is meaningful. Regardless of the role, everyone has to understand how they're responsible for the customer experience. We need to communicate that to the employees so that we can get that high level, right? And we have to know what's going on in their world. We have to know what makes them tick. We have to understand what's going to get them motivated, or what's going to keep them engaged. And that is the leader's responsibility, is to figure that out. And it's a puzzle sometimes, right? It's not always easy. People have different values. People have different ways of thinking of things. So one of the things that we want to make sure of as leaders is that we're connecting with people, right? So we can think of it, and Diane had mentioned this before, different generations right in the beginning when we started, the different generations have different ways of dealing with the world, right? And if we are good leaders, what we're going to do is we're going to think about it from the employee's perspective, right? We can set expectations, but we have to put it in terms of what they would find valuable, what they would find beneficial. How would it help them? And so what we think is important isn't the way that we need to communicate things as a leader to our employees if we're going to influence them to take action. We have to understand and put it in their terms of what interests them. And that middle part where it says relevance, and it should also say context, right? We put it in those terms, they're going to get it. For us to be able to do this, we have to be in the right place, right? We have to be able to communicate well to our employees to get the results that we're looking for. And I can guarantee you've probably experienced this before, or you've done it. It's somebody comes to your office and they say, hey, you got a minute? And your hands are on the keyboard, or you got your phone and your hands are on your phone and you're doing something and it's not an opportune time, right? Man, and here's what typically happens. Somebody will cock their ear and they'll go, yeah, I'm listening, right? And we're only half-heartedly listening, right? We're not there in the moment, which once again brings us back to we have to make a change in the way that we're communicating, because it's going to happen that we're going to have to listen to it again. We're going to have to ask questions. Maybe we're going to get the wrong response. Maybe we're going to make a blow to the relationship that we have because they're like, they never listen to me. So one of the recommendations that we have for new leaders is what we call create a culture of leadership mindfulness. And what does mindfulness mean? It's a term, it's a sense of well-being, right? So it's a state of awareness characterized by being fully present and engaged in the current moment without judgment or distraction. In our communication programs, we always say that listening is the less heralded form of communication. And so one of the things we want to do is, typically what happens is a few things. One thing is we start thinking of other things in our head as the other person's talking, or we start thinking of solutions and we maybe cut them off or we finish their sentence, right? What we're saying here is good leaders stop and pay attention and focus on the person and eliminate everything else in their brains so that they can understand what's going on, and then they can make a decision. Now, sometimes we have long talkers, right? Anybody ever experience a long talker? They just go on and on and on. It's okay. It's going to be okay. We know who they are, and we can put techniques into place to work with the long talker, but allow them to express themselves. Sometimes that's all they need, but be present in the moment. So we need to tune out that inner voice to focus on the person. And then the more a leader is present, the better they will all perform, right? The more we sit down and we listen and we understand, the better the whole team will perform, because they have the paradigm, the perspective that you are with them, all right? Which is building up the satisfaction with that immediate manager. So think about the way you communicate and the way that you interact with your people. Be focused. It's going to be a time saver and an ability to influence them even more. Now, how else can we do this? How can we build on our abilities to work with our team? One of those is coaching. And so we always say that, everyone, when we're asking people to do things, we're stretching them, we're holding them accountable, is that there's always going to be this, what we call reasonable allowable margin of error, right? So if we look here, the performance standards are in the middle. We have the control limits on either end, right? Either the top and the bottom. And then we go back and forth with our employees, and we're constantly monitoring their results and the way that they're getting things done. So we have those performance standards, we have those control limits. How do we handle it if we're trying to get them and maximize their performance? How do we handle it if they go outside the control limits? Maybe they make a mistake, right? Or they get the wrong result. We have to figure that out. And that's another decision that we can make as leaders. Because in the middle here, we're trying to coach people, and we need to coach people to be successful. That's part of our job, right? We can't just expect to show them once and then they're going to get it. There's not that many type of employees, A-type employees out there. Sometimes we're going to have to coach them. And that's a new skill set for a lot of first-time leaders, supervisors, or managers. In fact, the Global Leadership Forecast by DDI in 2023, they found that 85% of HR professionals report that coaching skills would be critical for leaders to develop in the next 3 years. That's pretty amazing, right? That's what HR leaders are saying about the HR professionals are saying about the leaders in the organization. They need to be coaches. So what is coaching? This John Whitmore, he was a professional race car driver. He was knighted in England, and for decades he was a performance consultant. And he said, coaching is unlocking people's potential to maximize their own performance. It is helping them to learn rather than teaching them, right? So it's a change in mindset. I'm teaching versus I'm getting somebody Socratic method. I'm getting them to learn on their own and to really understand and comprehend what needs to be done so that they can make it happen, right? So it's just not a random thing. At Dale Carnegie, we say there's a difference between coaching and feedback. This is the decision, again, a leadership decision that you can make to determine which tool, which technique you'll need to ensure that you're handling the situation correctly. So we say coaching is assisting and helping employees reach goals. It's advocating for optimal performance. So when we think about it, we're going to coach somebody on their performance standards. We're looking into the future and we're saying, this is your potential, right? We're not looking into the past. Feedback's looking into the past and saying, this is what could have happened or what should have happened. We're looking into the future and we're saying, this is your potential. So we have some coaching best practices here. There's 14 of them, might look like a long list. But these are really practical best practices to help you understand how can I coach people to maximize their performance, their future performance. So we're going to ask you to look through this list and go ahead and jot down what is one or two of these coaching best practices that would help you succeed as a leader and as a coach for your employees. So I'll give you a moment to read through that. And then go ahead and chat, put down the numbers. All right, Donna's first there, 1 and 12. So build rapport and trust and lead by example and model desired behaviors. Yeah, and we talked about that number one, build rapport and trust. Can't separate that. It's so critical to making it happen. Number 12, lead by example and model desired behaviors. Yeah, you can't have the, do as I say, not as I do model because people don't like that. Let's see. Christina said number 5, focus on development, not just performance, right? Employees love when they feel like somebody's investing in them, right? Organizations, the Gen Z that's coming out right now, that's one of the top things that they want from their new jobs or the jobs that they're working in is the organization is investing in them. The leader has to make that happen too and help them develop those skills. Let's see, Michelle Chapman said 6 and 9. So be an active listener, show empathy. We talked about listening. It's an underutilized skill. We focus more on the way we project or the way we say something versus how we take it in. But the more you can listen, the better you will be as a leader. And what is 6 and 9? Be patient and persistent. One of the things that people usually will say when they haven't been delegating is, I just don't have the time to show them how to do that, right? So we have to be patient, but as we're starting to do this, but we have to be persistent as well as keep at it, right? We can't just say it once and hope that they're going to do it. Somebody taught me early on in my leadership career is that hope is not a strategy. You've probably heard that as well. And it's not, right? We have to make sure that it happens. Let's see, Ashley Starr Frechette said number 14, celebrate progress, right? I mean, you can't understate how good appreciation and recognition is for people and how much they can get out of it. Good. So take some of these best practices to heart, invest in learning how to coach and to build a person up to maximize their future performance. Let's take a look at the other side of that decision, and that is on giving feedback. We're going to take a look at oxymorons. I bet you don't realize how many oxymorons. Definition of that is statements that are self-contradicting. We have a whole list here. Go ahead and read through those and go ahead and type in the chat. What are some that you find ironic, funny, humorous? Give you a moment to take a look through this list. All right. Stephen, extensive briefing. Depeche, home office. I think a lot more of us have realized that one. Ken, working vacation. I think we're, as leaders, we're all doing that I have so many of my clients nowadays that the people walk into a classroom and they have two phones now. And I'm just like, man, that is amazing. We want to separate it. I'm like, yeah, but you're using both. Megan, pretty ugly. Let's see. Patty, just went by. Linear curve. There we go. Diane, silent scream. I forgot that one was on there. That's a good one. All right. We have somebody that says C Fox there. They said constructive criticism. Thank you, C Fox. That's the one that we are here. Everything that we do in our training programs has a purpose. And we're going to be talking about feedback. The one that we wanted to talk about the most is constructive criticism. And why is it an oxymoron? Why is it a self-contradicting? Is because when you think about it, who here enjoys being critiqued? Who here enjoys being criticized? Probably nobody, right? Now, there are definitely different levels of thick skin that we have. But typically, if you've been really critiqued, you're going to more than likely get defensive, right? And so as a leader, when we say we're going to give you some constructive criticism, no, you're not, right? It's just not going to happen. Somebody is going to be in the back of their mind. They're going to be defending or justifying their behavior. And that shuts down any learning, any influence, any persuading. So what we recommend is that we talk about constructive feedback. So it's always helpful to take a look at a definition to know where we're coming from on this. The first is constructive criticism, and the second is constructive feedback. What parts of this? So constructive criticism is really the judgment of merits or faults or work of actions of one individual by another, the critic. We're critiquing somebody else, right? That's it. That's what we're critiquing. Usually that's what it boils down to. And that's where the justifications come in and the defensiveness. If we switch it, and this is a leadership technique, if we just switch it just a tad to constructive feedback, it's directed at the action, not the person. When I'm coaching people, I always say this, is when you think about it and you need to have this conversation with somebody, start it off with, here's what should have happened. Here's what happened. Let's discuss why, right? So we had a problem. Here's where it should have been. Let's talk about why, right? And that usually will open up a person and allow them to be more focused on what is being said and, being more self-aware and be able to work through it because they don't feel like they're being put on the spot and they're not going to dig their heels in and not listen to you. So let's take a look at what feedback is. Helping employees understand what prevented achieving goals. So once again, it's a decision, right? Do I need to coach and help them see their potential? Or do I need to help them understand what prevented? Reinforcing appropriate behaviors. We're looking into the past and we're saying, this is how we could have done it better, right? So once again, we make that decision and it's going to streamline our ability to work through issues and to get back on task again, right? Not only for us as the leader, but for the employees as well. So let's take a look at some principles that we can utilize to help us to get to that place. So we have 8 constructive feedback principles. Please read through these and go ahead and put down the number that would help you give feedback, help people take a look in the past and say to yourselves, all right. Okay. What numbers would we utilize? All right, Jose Guzman is the first one out there. Address any situation as it comes up. Yeah, of course, right? Is the longer we wait for that to happen, the bigger the problem gets, right? I've seen this over and over and over again in leaders. It's something that they'll say, and I remember I was doing some coaching with a sales leader. She had 20 different people, and one of the things that came up was people were punching in late. And so they had a time clock that was a 6-minute time clock. So the employees realized that they can punch in at 9:01, 9:02, and still be on time at 9 o'clock because it didn't turn again until 9:06. So, the boss was, coming down on her. He was like, you got to get people to punch in before we pay, but they're showing up late. And we have a operational standard that we're going to be available for customers starting at 9 a.m. And I remember one of the things that she was doing, she had let it go on too long. And we talked about what had happened and why she didn't address it. And so we made sure to fix that problem. But in the future, she learned that she has to address these problems when they're small so they don't snowball, right? So that's why we want to address things when they come up. Let's see, Cindy Carpaccio, number 5. Conduct the discussion in private. That's usually one that comes up on this list all the time, is pull people aside, allow them to save face. Don't embarrass them in front of others with that conversation. Just, hey, can I have a conversation? Can we talk? And then go to a private area and have the conversation, just so that that person isn't embarrassed and their effort goes down because they feel embarrassed. Let's see. Marcia said number 6, keep your language impersonal, focus on the problem, mistake, not the person. Exactly what we just talked about, right? Let's focus on, let's fix this. Let's find a solution and let's work through that. We can have a conversation, and we do if we need to. We can have a conversation about somebody's performance. And what we always recommend is that if you need to have a conversation about performance, you should have had it when you set the right expectations. Let's see. We had Marcia also said number 2, maintain a policy of keeping relationship warm so the other person is open to input. Absolutely, right? That's the relationship building. It's the rapport building. And when people are satisfied with their immediate supervisor, they're going to be satisfied with their jobs, right? They're going to be happy and they're going to be engaged. Eric says, I think taking a partnership approach is important. Absolutely. Let's see. Phil said number 7, if appropriate, supply the action step and request rather than demand cooperation. It's just, let's supply that. It's even better if we can ask questions of the other person and get them to come to that conclusion on their own, because then they're going to be more committed to the outcome, right? So those are the types of things that we want to focus on. So once again, it's a decision. A lot of leadership is decisions that you make. What technique do I want to apply to what type of scenario, so that I can make that happen? One of the things that we found in Dale Carnegie is there's certain competencies, leadership competencies, that are going to help people be successful. So it'd be interesting to see this. Go ahead and just take a look at the competencies. We don't have all the definitions out here, but you can probably understand what they mean just by the descriptors of the competency itself. Go ahead and put down, what competencies do you feel would be helpful to you? Which competencies would be helpful to you? Depeche, honesty and integrity. Yeah, that plays so huge. And a few other people said that. Louise said inspiring. Good. Hillary said confident. There we go. Kyle, effective communication. Sarah said that as well. Todd and Jean said that. Let's see. It's going fast and hard. Phil works cooperatively. He had like 5 of them. Good, Phil. You're a great typer. Let's see. A lot of them are effective communication. A lot of them are honesty and integrity, involves problems, effectively communicates, innovates, inspires. Yeah, absolutely, right? So one of the things that we know, the best leaders are very self-aware. There was 2 gentlemen, Joe and Harry. They created the Johari window. And if you take a look for it, Johari, Johari window. And it's a way to figure out, the your focus on yourself versus the awareness that others have about you. And they always said that, and this was brought up in a book called What Got You Here Won't Get You There by Dr. Marshall Goldsmith. And he said that when you look at your blind spots or you ask people for feedback about your blind spots, that's the pot of gold. Figuring out which maybe of these leadership competencies or areas that you need to work on in leadership are the ones that will give you the biggest bang for your buck. It'll give you biggest return on investment. And so we always encourage people to start evaluating yourself. We want to have strengths. Everyone has strengths. We think that we have all these competencies, and you do at varying levels. Some are going to be more important for you to be successful than others. So here's our gift to you. If you are interested in finding out more about which competencies would be able to be developed, what we'll do is we'll put into the chat, and we have on here, let me see if I can grab this. No. We have on here, I think you can click that link. We have on here is the ability to get a leadership competency assessment. So we'll also do a free 20 minutes of coaching if you would like that. So if you want to use the QR code, the link is right there. I think you can grab it from the Zoom screen. The link is right there. Please go ahead and you just have to put in some very basic information. We will send you the leadership competency assessment. It will help you determine what your strength competency is and what your shortfall competencies are. Can't grab the link. Oh, there we go. Somebody put it in there. Thank you very much. You're much better with this than I am. Matt, appreciate it. If you're interested in that, please go ahead and send us to go right on there to the page. We'll send you the assessment, and you'll have the ability to have a coaching with somebody from Dale Carnegie. And, we're guaranteeing a 20-minute conversation to review this and see how we can improve your leadership skills. So once again, want to thank everyone. If you wouldn't mind, just write in chat, what was your aha moment of our hour together? And then we will we'll close this out and turn it back over to the CBIA. So go ahead in chat. Thank you, Todd. Leaders versus managers. All right, great decision there. Enigri, constructive feedback over criticism. There we go, Michelle. Employees come first, leaders, managers, the coaching tips. All right, constructive feedback. Marcia, thank you. Let's see, Diane, the constructive feedback. There we go. Anna, listening with your whole self, not multitasking, listening. Great. That's a very strong lesson that we've learned there. Soon, Sam, soon there will be more Gen Z and workforce than the boomers. Yes, and we have to cater to them. I know a lot of people on this call are probably millennials. You took a beating about 5 to 6 years ago, maybe 8 years ago, and now you're in those leadership positions. So we have to figure out how to work with the Gen Zs going forward. And that is something that is on the minds of a lot of leaders as well. So thank you for your time. And just wanted to leave you with a parting thought by Dale Carnegie. Dale Carnegie was an actual person. He wrote the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, which is still a text in all of our programs because it's about people dealing with other people. And he said, knowledge isn't power until it's applied. So take that one thing that you learned, go ahead and apply it, and that will make your life easier and make you a stronger leader. So thank you again. My name is Bob Dickson from Dale Carnegie. My email is there. My mobile phone is there if anybody wants to get in touch. And thank you again. Have a great rest of the session, rest of the morning. And I'm going to turn this back over to Diane.
Don't leave yet quite, Bob. There was a question that came up.
Oh, perfect.
I don't know if you can address this
Sure.
Fully in just 5 minutes, but there was a question about remote work, and you were talking about I think the question popped up when you were talking about how people say, do you have a minute? And you're like, yeah, and you're kind of looking and kind of not. So if either the employee or the leader is remote, how does that change the way you help the people that you're leading?
Yeah, so it's really hard in remote work, and we've seen this over the years. A lot of our clients are coming back in person to do in-person training. And the reason being is because they want them to get out of that. And in remote work, it's really easy. I mean, you're looking at a camera, you can't tell if I'm on email, if I'm IMing, if I'm, looking at a search engine, whatever it is. So as a leader, one of the things that you can do is shut all those things down when you're going to have a conversation with somebody. Push them to the side. I always say turn your phone over so that it's facing down and you can't see it. If you're having those types of conversations, also, one of the things that I did for this whole webinar today was I turned off my email, right? So that I could be focused and I can be on point. As much as you can do that, you can tell when somebody is doing something else, right? And it's the way that they're paying attention. So don't be that leader that's trying to multitask when you're trying to have those conversations. Do the right things to turn it off. It used to be we'd pull somebody aside and we'd have that conversation in a different room. Now it's turn everything off on your computer except the camera. The other thing with remote working that we always say is create a policy of having your cameras on during meetings. And it's something that people sometimes are uncomfortable with. Maybe they push back, but create that policy because it does create better engagement for the employees, but it also creates better engagement with the leader as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great advice. So thank you so much, Bob. I really appreciate it. I hope everyone uses the QR code. Thank you for doing that. That's very generous.
Thank you.
So we will take a break. Reach out to Bob if you'd like more information about him and his services with Dale Carnegie. We're going to take a break until 10:15, and then we will restart. So see everyone in 10 minutes.
Thanks, Diane. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of the day.